Hello, my name is Tim Shoebridge. Welcome to this video. It's all about the Moog Muse in this video. You know, I haven't done a video in ages and I was preparing myself to do a gushing review of the Moog Muse and tell you how wonderful it is, tell you how much fun I'm having with it, etc. It's not actually here in my studio, it's back at home. It's in my little home studio. So we're going to nip over there and have a little look at it. Now this video, it's not going to be a review of the Muse at all, because I kind of sort of like hit a brick wall with it, which was the sound of its basic waveforms. Now, you know, basic waveforms, they are the basic building blocks of an analog subtractive synthesizer. And here with my Muse, I'm having some problems with them. Now, before we get started, we could say, well, it could be my Muse, it's a problem, it could be a defective unit. I read that a lot on the internet when anyone complains about anything. You've got a defective unit. Yes, it could just be a defective unit. It could be a problem for me. I suspect it isn't, though. We'll cover that bit at the end of the video. First, let's just find out what the hell I'm talking about. What is wrong with the waveforms on my Moog Muse? Now, I was sort of wanting to sort of like do a little bit of FM with some triangle waves, a bit of cross mod between the two of them, and I realized that the triangle waves really, they didn't sound clean. They sounded very fuzzy, like the noise source was in the mix. But there was no noise source in the mix, it's just the triangle waves, and that led me down a bit of a sort of a rabbit hole of investigation, looking at the waveforms on an oscilloscope and comparing them to another Moog synth that I've got set up in my little home studio, which is the Moog Matriarch. So what I'm going to show you now is a little comparison between three basic waveforms between the Matriarch and the Muse. We're going to listen to the square wave, we're going to listen to the sawtooth and the triangle. That's what's coming up right now, and then we'll come back with some conclusions if we have any and talk about this issue, whether it is just my synth or it could be your synth. Right, let's start with a square wave. This is what a square wave sounds like on the Matriarch. And this is the square wave on the Muse. Very different shape. Slightly out of tune as well, but we'll ignore that. But let's hear what a square wave sounds like a little bit higher up the register, where we can hear its characteristics a bit better. On the Matriarch, we can hear it's a hollow sound like you would expect from a square wave. On the Muse, it's buzzier, it's sharper, it's less hollow. It doesn't sound like a classic square wave. Okay, let's switch to a sawtooth on both of them. You can see the peak on the Muse is much more accentuated. It's a very spiky sawtooth. It's very, very buzzy, which is great. We like buzzy, sharp sounding sawtooths, but it loses bottom end. Okay, and finally onto the waveform that started all this for me, the triangle wave. This is the Matriarch triangle. It's a little bit imperfect, but it is a triangle. And that, I don't even know how to describe that. That's the Muse. And what do they sound like a little bit higher up the register? Matriarch is clean. Muse is fuzzy. Now I've tried this on both of the VCOs, and I've tried it across every single one of the 8 voices. So that is 16 VCOs in total. They all behave the same way. It's not a defect with one voice or one VCO. They're all the same. One thing I haven't tried though is the mod oscillator. So we're going to give that one a go now. Let's start off with the square wave. It looks exactly the same as the other VCOs. It's got that very spiky, not particularly hollow sound to it. This is a ramp up sawtooth. Looks exactly the same as the other VCOs. Here's the ramp down. In fact, the graphics are the wrong way around. And this is the sine wave on the mod oscillator. It's fuzzy, like the triangle wave is fuzzy on the other oscillators. It actually looks a little bit more triangular than the triangle wave. Let's compare it to the Matriarch, which is more pointy and more triangular. This is the sine wave of the mod oscillator. And this is the triangle wave of VCO1 and VCO2. Now, to be perfectly honest with you, I just don't know whether you're going to be able to hear the differences in those waveforms that I can hear with my speakers or with my headphones. I just don't know what's going to happen with YouTube and compression, etc. But there is a very obvious difference to me with the triangle wave of the Muse versus any other analog synth I've got. There's this kind of fuzziness to it. It's not a great sound. The sine wave on the mod oscillator, that's got the same fuzziness. It's not a great sound either. It's not a pure tone, which you expect from a triangle wave and from a sine wave. Now the sawtooth and the square waves, they're more tricky to hear the difference. But for me, a classic square wave, you know, with 50% pulse width set on it, it's got a real sort of like hollow tone to it. It's, you know, it sounds like a clarinet. And the Matriarch isn't the most hollow toned square wave I've ever heard, to be honest with you. But the Muse is much less so. It's much more buzzy. It's not so hollow. It doesn't have so much lower frequency content there when you play that square wave. As for the sawtooth is so buzzy. It's so peaky. Peaky and buzzy. It really is. Now, you know, I know that many people love a buzzy sawtooth. That's why we love the Model D, and we don't love the Voyager, for example. It's the buzziness that we really love. But this is so buzzy. It's so buzzy that it actually doesn't have a weight to the sound that the Matriarch does, for example. Again, those lower end frequencies are just absent. So I really do, you know, struggle to go very much further with my Moog Muse. Now, is it just my unit? Is my unit defective? And am I a real small minority compared to everyone else who's very happy with their Moog Muse? Now, I'll be perfectly honest with you, I'd been playing around with my Muse for a couple of hours before I discovered this issue with the triangle wave and the fuzziness of it. Because I was playing patches and I was putting together patches quite quickly, and as soon as you start to sort of like, you know, add some filter and do some modulations, and of course add some delay and some diffusion echo as well, once you start getting into a patch, those sort of like those nuances of those raw waves becomes far less obvious. So you really could be playing around with your Muse for quite a long time. If all you want to do is just play presets and maybe just fiddle around with them and adjust them slightly, you're probably not knowing what on earth I'm talking about. You've never seen that with your Muse at all. I would suggest that if you feel like it, then sort of like go to an initialized patch, go to one oscillator, and choose the triangle wave and listen to it. Really listen to it at the lower frequencies possibly rather than the higher ones, and tell me in the comment section below if you hear that fuzzy kind of sound going on there. And if you do hear that fuzzy kind of sound, maybe you'll want to start listening to a square wave and a sawtooth and compare them to other synths you might have. Maybe you might find the same differences that I've got. I have contacted 5 people I know who have a Muse, and I haven't gone into all the details. I don't want them to sort of like, I don't know, be a bit crestfallen about their Muses if they really like them. But I did ask them, please can you just listen to a triangle wave on its own and tell me what you think of it. Does it sound right to you? I'm still waiting for the 5th person to come back to me. Maybe he's so depressed now he doesn't want to talk to me anymore. But the other 4 have all come back and affirmed to me that their triangle waves are a bit fuzzy, definitely imperfect, not what they would expect from a triangle wave, and they've never noticed this before. So, you know, once I noticed this this issue with my triangle wave, I did actually go onto the internet and I did search for Moog Muse fuzzy sounding triangle wave or something like that. I searched for, and I did find a discussion going on the In Music Moog forum where someone was complaining about their triangle wave sounding rather buzzy and fuzzy. And of course the immediate response is, you probably got a defective unit. Someone else says, yes, mine is fuzzy too, but I think it's okay. So, you know, how many of these Moog Muses are fuzzy and how many of them have got these strange looking and slightly odd sounding raw waves? I don't know, but I don't think it is just me, put it that way. And no one else is really talking about this on YouTube. No one has actually looked at it. So with that in mind, I thought, okay, I'm going to go to 2 of my favourite synth reviewers, because they always get out their oscilloscopes and show us the waveforms. And so my first port of call was Nick Batt and Sonic State, because he has done a review of the Muse and I'm sure he must have got his oscilloscope out. So I looked at his video. I'll show it here just to show a couple of little screenshots of it. He doesn't actually listen to, on the video, he doesn't actually listen to the triangle wave at all. He does show me, he does show us, sorry, he does show us all his sawtooth, and his sawtooth is a lot less spiky than my one. It looks far more normal. His square wave looks actually quite similar to my square wave. But the sawtooth certainly looks better in his example on his oscilloscope than my one does. But as for the triangle, can't see. So then I go to my second port of call for someone who does incredibly thorough reviews and always gets his oscilloscope out, and that is Loopop. So I've gone to the Loopop video and I have again looked for those waveforms, please, and I see a triangle wave looking like, much more like a triangle wave. Loopop's Muse has got a nice looking triangle wave. We don't really get much chance to hear it, but you can see from the screenshot he has got a triangle wave and I don't. I have a blob. So what's going on here? Were early units better than later units? Have they changed something in the manufacturing production cycles? Do they know that they've got issues? Who knows? And at the end of the day, I'm trying not to lose my train of thought here. At the end of the day, there is an issue there. I see there is an issue with these waveforms, so I would really love to hear from you. Are you a Moog Muse owner, a proud Moog Muse owner, and why not be proud of this synthesizer? But please tell me, have you actually listened to the raw waveforms on their own? Have you compared them to your other synthesizers? Have you thought, that doesn't sound quite right to me, or don't you care at all maybe? Let me know in the comments. I'd really love to get a little bit of a wider sort of like consensus on this than the 5 friends that I know that have a Muse. So please let me know. I really would like to carry on with my preparations to do a gushing review of this synthesizer, but until then, as always, thanks very much for watching.